Good morning, everyone. Hi. Thank you so much for the attendance. It's a nice early session. Well, for me, it's early because it's winter. We have Michael. I hope you're still here, Michael. Yes, there we go. Morning. Oh, shame. And Michael is quite fluish today, so you're going to have to excuse some splutters and coughing and, all of the things. But very excited, Michael. That first session was so insightful. I actually still feel bad because, I just learned so much about what I'm doing unintentionally incorrect. So it was a great session. I really recommend this highly if you guys want to share with your colleagues. We have everything on the, sorry, Tebogo, I'm just going to mute you guys. There we go. Yeah, I would definitely recommend that you share with your colleagues. Both recordings are going to be on online on the SATSA Training Academy. If you could just go and have a look at our website. Critical information, really, really critical information. And Michael, you know what I thought I wanted to do? I'm about to launch the SATSA map, which I've been saying since the beginning of May, but it's going to happen at some stage. And I actually wanted to put a pink route as well so that people can identify on there. But I will have to talk to you about those people that are verified or known, or because it's one of those things you can't just say, oh, I'm a venture provider and there's no credibility around it. So we'll be in touch with that. That will be really, really cool. But I am handing over to you. Good luck. I'm sure you will be fine.
Thank you very much, Annelie. And good morning, everyone. Yeah, and as Annelie says, I am all fluey. I did double dose last night to try and get rid of it, but it didn't seem to work. So please forgive what I call my radio lesbian voice. And I have a badge, I can say that. So I'm going to share my screen quickly. But for those of you who were here last time, and for those of you who are new, I love interaction. And I know it's a little more difficult in a virtual space, but please don't be shy to ask questions. If you have something to comment or say or ask on the spot, please raise your hand or speak up, and let's get the questions out the way now. There will be an opportunity at the end as well, but don't be shy to ask now, because I think it's really important that we do clarify everything, because there is so many misunderstandings and such weird misperceptions and crazy thinking around this that it's a lot easier than what you actually think. So today we're going to be talking about capturing the rainbow hearts, which is kind of very high level strategic marketing insights for LGBTQ plus tourism. Now, I'm not a marketing specialist per se, but I have done a lot of research into what is working and what is not working. And we'll unpack all of that as we go along here. So let me start with why is it not moving? There we go.
Michael, can I interrupt you quickly?
Please.
It would be interesting to see of the people that are attending it now, who were here for the last session or watched the last session, because I thought that one slide, where you've got the sort of scales, were very important, and perhaps there are a few people that didn't get that from the last one. So maybe if you guys just want to raise your hands, give us an idea of who was here before, and that I think that'll help you as well, Michael, just to set the scene.
Cool, perfect, thanks. I can't see any raised hands, so Hannah, if you can, because I'm not a host, so you can please just let me know as soon as there are any.
I can't see it either.
Oh, I can. Marika's raised her hand.
Marika, woohoo! Are you the only one that attended from previous? Okay, and no, there's two people.
Finance 9, so that is cool. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, brilliant. That gives us a sense.
Okay, lovely. So I'm not going to go through all of those stats again, but I do have a few of them. Some of them I am repeating, but there's also additional ones as well, which do become a little interesting. And this is more targeted to the kind of the out there marketing kind of perspective. So the agenda, and most people don't actually get that. I know it's spelled incorrectly on purpose. We're going to talk about insights into the LGBTQ traveler, navigating inclusive messaging and imagery. That's really, really important. And then just a bit of practical guidance. So I've got some samples of things that work and things that don't work. And it'll be interesting to hear your opinions on that as we go along. So First of all, this is a really important statement. This was released by a friend of mine, actually. His name is Peter Jordan. He's a very well-known LGBT tourism specialist. He's a British guy based in the UK, and he's highly intelligent, and he's one of those people who works with tourism organizations around the world, and he strategizes with them to create really well-balanced LGBTQ strategies for their destinations. And he wrote for the European Travel Commission Handbook on LGBT tourism in Europe, specific to 2018. He said, engaging with the LGBTQ plus traveler should in essence be about creating a safe and welcoming environment and communicating this with understanding and respect. Now, the words that are bolded, they're in that order for a very specific reason. If you as an organization want to engage with the LGBTQ plus traveler, it's really important that you create the safe and welcoming environment first, and then you start communicating, because you will then have the understanding and the respect in order to be able to communicate and deliver effectively. So it's not just about jumping on the bandwagon and following a Pride Month way of thinking. So here's an interesting map.
Also, if I
Yeah.
can interrupt you again, Michael, sorry, but I did see
Yeah.
quite a few brands being hauled over the coals because they jumped on the Pride bandwagon.
Yes,
Or
finally,
Pride
people are
Month.
starting to speak up. Yes, I've got
Yeah.
examples of that later on, which we'll chat about. Finally,
Okay.
people are starting to speak. But now we're on the 2nd of, what's it, 3rd of July, whatever it is. So Pride Month is over. So now suddenly we don't exist anymore, which is quite interesting. Because people have cared for a month and that's enough, apparently, which of course it's not. So here's a very interesting map that an organization called ILGA, they're based in Europe. They are the leading LGBT human rights organization in the world. They do incredible work. They're not specific to tourism, they're specific to human rights as a whole. But they release a map every now and then. The latest one they released was 2020. I'm really hoping they release a new one soon. In fact, they probably will. They're hosting a very big LGBT conference here in Cape Town in November. So this one is from 2020, so it has shifted. All of the countries that are in a dark blue indicate that it is a safe country for LGBT travelers or LGBT people to go to. You'll see South Africa is in dark blue because we are one of the safest, purely because our constitution protects all LGBT people above everything else. And then if you look kind of in the middle of Africa and the Middle East areas into Afghanistan, Iran, Uganda is in the wrong color at the moment. That will change. Ghana is the wrong color at the moment. That will go dark. So the very dark red or burgundy color, those are the countries where it is very illegal to be in the LGBT community, and there is one or two countries that it's still punishable by death to a certain degree. Doesn't always happen, and people do fight it, but it is actually written into law. So it's a little frightening. But with that said, the reason I'm showing you this is we're in a good place because we can advertise and market to the global LGBT traveler that South Africa is a destination of choice because when you come here, you are safe. With that said, what happens on paper and what happens in reality are not always the same things. I think you will agree. So some of you may have seen these stats already. These are quite amazing numbers. Before I tell you, all of the stats that I get are from two organizations. One is called LGBT Capital, and the other is called CMI, which is Community Marketing and Insights. They're based in San Francisco. They try for annual reports. It's usually kind of biannual reports where they focus specifically on LGBT tourism. They do focus quite closely on the North American, particularly USA markets, because it's easier for them, I suppose. But the results are very accurate and they're relevant to us, even though we're not there. Because number one, the North American market is a very big one for us from an LGBT perspective, but also LGBT people are LGBT people around the world, and we all have the same or similar needs, depending on what segment we fall in within that LGBT space. So globally, the statistics are showing that LGBTQ plus consumers are worth about $4.7 trillion. Now, considering we're only about, this is a hard one, I say 4 to 7% of the population, it's probably closer to 15 to 20%, but that's not documented because so many people are still living in a world where they cannot actually truly be out. But it's about 388 million people on average, somewhere around there. So a lot of people and a lot of money, as I'm sure you'll agree. In the USA, the LGBT consumer spends about $1 trillion, the UK about $6 billion pounds, and Europe about 50 billion euros. Now, in 2020, I'm still waiting for new stats on this, but in 2020, the USA alone averaged a spend of $100 billion on travel alone. I think we'll agree that's pretty large, right? So there is money there. The misperception is that all gay men are rich. That's not true. And that all gay men spend lots of money. That's also not true. But it is also true on one side. But we'll unpack all of that a little later as well. So the stats are showing that by 2030, the LGBT tourism market is expected to reach $568.5 billion globally. That's a tiny number that we want a little bit of a chunk of, right? Pretty huge. And they're estimating that 30 to 35% of the markets, the travel markets, will all be in the LGBT community. Now, people say, but how's it even possible? Because we're a minority. Yeah, we are a minority, absolutely. But as the LGBTQ plus acronym grows, and I'll unpack it a little bit for you a little later, so do the people. We're constantly adding new letters onto the acronym because new gender identities are appearing, new sexual orientations are appearing, but also as the world becomes better at being humans, people are feeling safer, more confident, and more open to actually coming out and living their true selves. So when a person is in the closet and they can't come out due to their environment or their socioeconomic environment or whatever it is, they technically fall under a non-LGBT market and therefore don't fall into this bracket. It's only when they actively come out and start living a true life that they fall into this bracket. So then it does make sense that 30 to 35% of the market is potential. And again, huge, huge, huge. So some interesting stats here. There were, I think, 1,000 participants in this USA-based survey that was done quite recently. This was released in February 24 by Community Marketing Insights in San Francisco. The question was about the type of traveler. If you had to pick one, what type of price point traveler are you? Now, you'll see the first column in the table says all LGBTQ, and then it breaks it down to the right of that. I'm not going to go into the breakdowns. I'm just going to talk about the all LGBTQ for now. Luxury traveler, only 3% of the market. Now, that automatically indicates that the perception that I'm sure you will have heard of the acronym DINK, dual income, no kids. Yeah, it is true. It is a reality, but that's not what the LGBT traveler is in its entirety. Only 3% have got real money to spend on luxury travel. 38% of LGBT travelers have a moderate price with a little bit of luxury, and 28% are average travelers. Anything less than that budget, and then economy travelers up down to 5%. So that indicates that the mid-range is a great target, and it's a very widespread, diverse market that we can't forget about everyone. So the next question about travel partners is, who do you typically travel with for a vacation? With a partner or a spouse, 62%. And that's wonderful for us as a community, because it's showing that the destinations that people are traveling to and the people who are marketing to them are showing that they're open and that they are including everyone. So it's now becoming okay or better to travel with your spouse without having to pretend, without having to buy 2 rooms, without having to ask for 2 single beds and so on. I travel by myself, 44%. Some of us are still single. And that's okay too, because we also have some value. LGBT friends, it's a great market to travel with a group of friends who are in the LGBT community, who all have similar mindsets, some similar ideals and so on. With a parent, sibling, or other family member. And then even further down with my children, the LGBTQ family model is a very big market currently, and it's going to grow exponentially over the next couple of years. So we need to be equipped for it. And then with my pets, I still struggle with that, to be very honest. I'm not a pet guy at all, sorry, Annelie, but it is what it is. So interesting stuff. No comment. So from a destination perspective, the importance of being LGBT welcoming. How important are the following in vacation destination selection processes? So the question was, is the destination LGBT welcoming? 83% of the participants said yes, they want it to be welcoming. Good value, 76%. I think that's pretty obvious. How safe is it? Low crime rate. So this is not specific to LGBT. This is specific to a South African context of crime, 72%. And then if you go further down, destination is a popular LGBTQ hotspot. Only 22% of the participants say that is a need for them for their choice of destination. And that's interesting because, again, it breaks another myth that LGBT travelers want to travel for the gay nightclubs, for the saunas, for the sex things, for the crazy stuff. Not necessarily the case at all, which is interesting. They want everything else. And I have very interesting conversations with the likes of SA Tourism and everything, where they keep on asking me, you know, what are in South Africa, where are the gay products? And I will keep having to explain to them that technically that doesn't really exist. I mean, although we have created a specifically LGBT product, it's more about taking the amazing products that we already have and helping them become inclusive so that they become LGBT inclusive. So regarding urban concerns, when the media reports negative impressions about a city, how much do these concerns discourage you from visiting is the question. An increase in anti-LGBT harassment and violence in the city, 82%. So Uganda, unfortunately, and the East Africa and soon West Africa are becoming no-go zones for LGBT travelers completely. And it's very difficult for us to sell it because, I mean, we don't follow a boycott way of thinking, but it does become difficult because it's important that our customers are safe. Again, similarly, anti-LGBT laws passed in the state of country. Uganda is a great example. 73% are saying they won't go. So it's important. And again, South Africa, we're pretty good. So we're definitely leading the way there. So this is an interesting question as well. Talking about LGBT sections on travel company websites. Many years ago, travel companies and destinations began offering specific selections or pages on their website dedicated to the community. Do you think these type of LGBT-specific website sections are still needed? And I wouldn't mind some feedback here from all of you if you think what your opinions are. 44% of people said they strongly feel that LGBT web pages are needed. 41%, they're kind of in the middle. And only 10% kind of say not really. It's not really a big thing. And 2 saying absolutely no.
Hi,
So
Sian speaking.
Sian, hi. Oh, I think she's answered the phone call.
Hello.
Hello?
I put her on mute, sorry.
Okay,
I put
cool,
her on
cool.
mute. If she needs to speak, she must jump in again.
Okay, cool. So that's really interesting. And we'll chat about, unpack this a little bit later when we go into some examples and everything. I think this is an important topic, and there are many ways around it, but it's also very easy to get it wrong and to jump onto rainbow washing, which I'll explain in a bit. So this is quite an interesting one as well. What are the most important ways a city or destination can demonstrate that they are truly LGBTQ welcoming? 68%, it's very important for non-discrimination laws and policies to be at local level. Again, in South Africa, we're good. 67% wants a destination who speaks out against against anti-LGBT laws, and 65% known to be a place that strives for racial equality. Again, South Africa is pretty cool there. So if you go a little further down, has LGBT events like Pride or more, only 36%. Has an LGBT neighborhood, only 32%. The tourism office has an LGBT specific section on their website, only 32%. So again, this is more about the destination as a whole, as it is about being specifically LGBT thinking. It's more about being inclusive of everyone than it is about focusing specifically on here come the gays. So interesting stuff, right? And I've got, I forgot to share this with you. I will. I've got the full report, and it's really interesting.
Oh, yes, please. The presentation from the previous time and the report, and then this presentation as well, if you can.
Totally. Yeah. Cool. So, utilizing LGBT-specific media for travel planning. In the past 12 months, have you utilized LGBT-specific print, digital, or social media as a resource for planning your travel experiences? So what that basically asking is, are the travelers searching for LGBT content before they make a decision? 4% say always, 11 say often, 31 say sometimes, and then 28 say never. So it's a very interesting dichotomy there, because where is the balance between how far do we go with our LGBT marketing and how far do we go with creating a more inclusive environment through our marketing efforts that have a representation of diversity? That's where I lean towards. But again, we'll unpack all of that as we go along. Now, I love this slide, and I think dog is cute, even though I'm not a dog fan. Again, sorry, Emily. I tend to purchase from companies that market to and support the LGBT community. 85% of people said yes, 2% they disagree. Of those people, 70% of them said they would pay a premium price if that company is seen to be supporting the community on many levels. And 78% of those people said actually switch a brand to
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
Siri has just spoken back to me. 78% of people said they would actually switch a brand to a company that is actively marketing to and inclusive of the community. Interesting, right? Cool. Let's talk about rainbow washing. So the challenge is when we're talking about marketing to the community, a lot of people don't understand necessarily the concept of rainbow washing. And I've got a little video to show you which explains it beautifully. So let me actually just jump to that. Then we can chat about it. Here we go.
Pride is not a weak thing. Pride is every single day. It's how do you allow yourself and everyone around you to bring their unapologetic self to work.
Many Calgary businesses are sporting rainbow flags this Pride Week. Is it a sign of a safe space or an empty gesture? This Calgary woman says there's a big difference between true corporate pride and rainbow washing.
To truly make a workspace safe, it's a culmination of a lot of small things. It can even just be as small as someone wearing pronoun pins to work. It can be as small as having a little pride flag. It can be as small as having more educational LGBT events that are not just restricted during Pride Week.
Singh moved to Calgary from India 5 years ago to study at the Haskayne School of Business. And for her, the move wasn't just about relocating to a new country.
I came in as an international student from a country where I couldn't be openly gay. So coming to Canada was like a breath of fresh air.
While she's grateful to see the sign of support in business windows this Pride Week, Singh says corporate pride is about consistency and allyship all year round.
When people start speaking up and getting involved in things that don't directly affect them, we as a community feel more supported and empowered, and the onus is shared instead of us feeling all the burden.
Singh believes that by businesses displaying pride flags, they are acknowledging diverse backgrounds. But she says it takes actions to demonstrate inclusivity. In Calgary, Shilpa Downton, City News.
That's interesting, right? Does anybody have any questions on that or comments?
I suppose, sorry, like you almost become fearful of sort of putting yourself as, gay, pride friendly, because it might come back at you. Like, have we done enough?
Yeah.
I suppose that's the question.
Well, absolutely.
We've done enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a very big challenge on the one side of it, is people are wanting to do something. They're wanting to show their commitment, or the start of their commitment at least, but don't necessarily know how to do it. So that's where training and education comes into play. That's really important. You can't just Google this. It's a lot deeper. But then on the other hand, there are organizations who are doing it because they're checking the box and they think it's the right thing to do so that they can ride the wave of this so-called wealthy market or high impact market. So there's a fine line between the two. I'm not against the concept of pride washing per se. I think you can earn the right to pride wash over a Pride Month specifically if you're actively involved throughout the entire year.
Yeah, we have a question from Menenle. I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly. Menenle, you can unmute.
Oh, hi. Thank you for acknowledging. I have two questions. Number one is
You first have to tell us how to pronounce. If I got it wrong.
No, it's correct. It's Minenhle, yeah.
Okay, Menenhle.
Yes. My first question is there a website that says that my establishment is LGBTQ plus friendly, or how do I make it known that it is friendly, or do I need to put it on my social media pages or in my website? And the other one is, do I apply to put a rainbow flag as a sign of support, or can I just buy it and put it in my establishment? Thank you.
Great questions, Minekhle. Thank you very much. Question number one. So there are a number of ways of looking at this. I know Hanley and I are very firm believers in some kind of certification. I think it's important to work with organizations that do provide a level of accreditation. So the work that we do through Allstay, which you can see on the screen there right now, is an education process specific on LGBTQ plus sensitivity and awareness, and specific to the tourism industry. We are accredited by the International LGBTQ plus Travel Association based in America, and they have a very stringent program that then qualifies, if you go through that process, then qualifies you for a global stamp of approval from them, which is the highest level of accreditation that you can get in the country in this particular context. With that said, the All-State program as well also offers a localized stamp of approval. And it is important, in my opinion, if you are selling your organization or your product as LGBT inclusive, it is important to indicate it some way, because LGBT travelers do look out for it. But it's got to be authentic, though. If you're just going to paste it there for the wrong reasons, or for you feel like that's needed, then I would perhaps rethink that. Sorry, your second question was? I've got flu brain.
My second question was, do I apply to put up a rainbow flag?
Oh, no, you can put up a rainbow flag however, wherever you like. There is one restriction though, you may or may not be aware of this, but there is a South African rainbow flag, which is the old 6-color rainbow flag with the shape of the South African flag, you know, the Y shape on its side, that's imprinted on top of that. That one you're not allowed to use without permission. It's actually owned by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, I think. So that you have to apply for, but no one knows what it is anyway, so I wouldn't bother with that, to be very honest. But no, you're free to use it however you want. Yeah, as long as you use the right one, and I'll show you soon what that is. Any other questions?
No, thank you. Thank you so much.
Cool. From anyone else, or can I move on? Fab, let's move on. Cool. So navigating inclusive inclusive messaging and imagery. Some of you may have seen this. So this is the acronym. And people usually laugh at this and they think, oh dear, why are we doing this? This is too much. Too much to take in. We'll never remember any of this stuff. It's okay. You don't need to remember it. And the last bit is not SAA. I promise you, not South African Airways. So let's see what they all mean. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, pansexual, two-spirit, androgynous, asexual. Any questions?
Lots of questions. No, I'm teasing. No, I'm teasing.
I usually have a question of what is pansexual. Very simple. Pansexual is someone who falls in love with a person, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. I then get the question of what is two-spirit. Two-spirit is a native North American way of thinking. So we'll probably never come across that here in South Africa. The young folk are reintroducing this because in their ancient cultures, they believe that they've always had a third spirit gender, which they are now just reintroducing into their culture, and they're called it two-spirit. Androgynous, I'm sure you're all aware, is when someone in the way they appear, the way they present themselves, when you take first look at them, you're unsure whether they are the traditional male or traditional female. And asexual is when someone is not sexually attracted to anybody at all.
Michael, that's quite interesting, the two-spirit, because it like, you know, so this is not, I mean, it's a weird thing to say, but, you know, some people think it's a fad, it's a modern thing, but this shows that it goes back to ancient times.
Exactly. I mean, the history of LGBTQ is very interesting. It goes back thousands and thousands of years. This is not a newly constructed ideology by humans. This has been around forever. We're just defining it now, and we're understanding it differently and in a better way. And then, of course, there's a plus at the end of this long acronym, which is others, non-conforming, non-binary, genderqueer, and gender neutral, and many variations of that. I'm sure you've all heard what that is. And then, of course, for those of you who are not in the LGBT community, allies also fall under this very big acronym. Now, that doesn't mean those of you who are straight are doing a flying leap out the closet. You're really not. Don't worry about that. But it's a good thing to be an ally, because without allies, the LGBTQ plus movement And the acceptance of LGBTQ people cannot ever increase. It cannot ever grow without allies. So allies are very, very important in our process. So very quickly, I'm just going to show you some of this because we are talking marketing, and the question was raised, do I need to pay a license to use these flags or anything? I'm not a giant fan of using the flag just as it is. I prefer to incorporate the thinking of a flag into marketing, which I'll give some examples of shortly. But this is the original rainbow flag that you all know. Now, unfortunately, with this, when it was designed, it only had sexual orientation in mind. So it was known as the gay flag. So it only represented gay, lesbian, bisexual people. Then, of course, the transgender people needed a flag as well. So that was that they created this one. So then this is now moving into the gender space. And then they decided to combine the two of them to make one Progress Pride flag, and they included the black and the brown. When I say they, I have no idea who they are, to be very honest with you. The people overseas somewhere. I don't know who it was who actually did it. It was a group of people. The black and the brown now represents LGBT people of color, and the blue, white, and pink gender, and the 6 colors sexual orientation. But then intersex people, this is the intersex flag, decided they were not being represented, so they were added into there as well. So now this is a truly inclusive flag of LGBT people. So if you ever are considering using any of this in your marketing materials, for those of you who are marketing specialists, you will know these colors clash dreadfully, and it's really, really, really difficult to use all of them. Believe me, I know we've tried many times. It's very difficult. So just be aware that it's challenging, and as soon as you exclude one, you're excluding all of them. But that said, don't be scared of it. There are ways around it. Okay, so to summarize it very quickly, all you have to remember is LGBTQ+. Now, I generally just say LGBT purely because it takes so long to say the rest. It is perfectly acceptable, but I'll give you more samples of that in a little bit. And a nice way to remember it is, this is the LGBTQ+ umbrella. So if you imagine that the actual umbrella part at the top is the letter Q, which represents queer. So that represents the entire LGBT community. Then on the one side of the umbrella is LGB, so that's lesbian, gay, bisexual, so all sexual orientations. On the other side is the T, which is transgender, so that represents gender identities. Now, it's important to remember that they are not the same thing. Sexual orientation and gender identity are not the same thing. You can be one of each, but you can't be two of one. So you can't be a lesbian gay person for obvious reasons, but you can be a gay transgender woman, for example. If you have questions on that, that's a long conversation. We'll chat at the end about that. Make a note. But I hope it makes sense. Cool. Now we're going to just talk about the nitty-gritties here. Okay. Cool. So, some things to consider while navigating inclusive messaging and imagery. Language. Language it's so important. Is the language that you are using gender inclusive, or is it not? Pronouns, when to use them and when not to use them. Gender diversity, know your audience. That's really important. As marketers, I mean, that's kind of basic 101. You need to know who you're talking to. You need to understand their needs. You need to understand what they want and how does your product fit into their world. And barriers and challenges faced by the community. We need to understand them so we can find the right kind of empathy and understanding around it so that we can deliver in the best possible way we need to, in an inclusive manner. So let's unpack that a little bit here. So language, just some samples. This list can go on forever and ever and ever. We don't have all that time. So I pulled out the important ones here. It's okay to say LGBT, LGBTQ, LGBTQ+, LGBTI, LGBTQIA+, and variations thereof. It's not necessary to go much longer than that, because they're all acceptable. And as I said earlier, LGBT is completely acceptable. And also, I'm not 100% fan of it, purely because I'm an older person. The word queer is also perfectly fine to use to represent the entire community. I was interviewed last week on the Travel Now article. I'm not sure if you saw it, where the focus was on queer travel and the queer traveler, and it was perfectly fine and acceptable to talk about it. But I was concerned, and I raised this with them, was that by talking about queer, we're eliminating the older generations in the LGBT community, because the older generations in our day queer was a derogatory term, like morphe and faggot, etc. So we don't like it, but it's become very acceptable, and it has become kind of the umbrella for everything. Then it's okay to use the word sexual orientation and gender identity, not the other way around. It's not a sexual identity. You don't identify as a gay person. And gender identity, same thing. It's not gender orientation. You don't lean towards being a transgender person. You are one. You identify as one. And then LGBT friendly or LGBT inclusive. LGBT welcoming is also a good one that you can use. It's okay to, and again, variations of the LGBT in there is also fine. What's not okay, again, I pulled out the really important ones. There's many, many, many of them. GLBT, that sounds like a sandwich that you'd buy at Woolies. It's important that we keep the LGBT in the right order, purely just so we don't confuse it any more than it already is. And the word sexual preference. Now, I'd like to open up the floor here. Does anybody want to tell me why sexual preference is so unbelievably wrong to use?
No, goodness, you're going to have to tell me, because I do that.
And no, a lot of people do. And I'm not criticizing, don't get me wrong. A lot of people do it. It's very simple. Preference indicates choice. And Lady Gaga said it perfectly. We're born this way.
Oh,
You don't
yes.
choose. Sorry, yeah?
No, I'm just saying that's so true.
You don't choose to be gay. You don't choose to be lesbian. You're born that way. You may make a choice. This is where it may become the lines become a little blurred here. You may, if you're a transgender person, you may make the choice to medically transition from either male to female or female to male by taking hormonal medication or having surgery, but your choice to be transgender does not exist. You were born that way. It's quite simple, really. So avoid the word preference of choice all the time, because it's not a choice. Never has been, never will be. Alternative lifestyle. I found this quite funny because, I mean, in Cape Town alone, we could judge people by the cover many times. If you go down to Scarborough, they have a very alternative lifestyle to what I have here in Sea Point. So where do we draw the line? It's just someone who's different to you. That's all, and that's okay. Referring to LGBT people as your friend or those people, or my favorite one, the gays. I think it's very funny, and people do use it. People are people at the end of the day. It doesn't matter who you love, as long as you're allowed to love them. Transgendered. This is quite an interesting one. People don't necessarily understand the terminology around transgender. A lot of people still use transsexual, which is a bit of a taboo word, because it does, or cross-dresser. Cross-dresser, in my opinion, is more of a fetish than an actual gender identity. And a person who is transgender is not transgendered. You don't become a transgender, and because that stems back to the first point of sexual preference. You're born that way. You may choose to transition physically, but you don't become a transgender person. Then gay marriage. This is a fun one. How many of you have been to a gay wedding? Shout out yes. No one?
We're not allowed to. We know.
Oh. Okay, I'm not asking, how many of you have been to a wedding?
That
All
I
of
have.
you.
Yes.
All of you. It's the same thing. It's not a gay wedding. It's just a wedding. At the end of the day, if we want to be inclusive in our approach, we can't be exclusive while we're trying to be inclusive. And if we're talking about the concept of a same-sex marriage, it's exactly the same thing as a marriage. And if we want to position, if we're a wedding destination, for example, and we want to position our offering is that we do weddings and we do gay weddings, why is it different? How about we just do weddings and we're inclusive to everyone? Make sense? It's quite simple, really. Born female. And now this is also, some people can't struggle to get their heads around it. Yes.
Yeah, Michael. I suppose this is that question about, like, when I said earlier on, you're almost scared to say that you are an ally, because how do you prove it? Now, so in some instance, you want to show people that, like, you can have a wedding here regardless of your, gender or lifestyle or preferences. Oh, they're not happy about that.
Dogs?
Yeah, bite me. So I suppose that's the thin line that we are I'm just giving you an outside perspective. So, when do you say it and when don't you? And inevitably we're probably going to make some mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Even I still make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. So you mentioned about when you want to be an ally, or when you're trying to do the right thing as an ally. If you're an ally, you're an ally. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do everything right. If your intentions are there, that's a great starting point, and that is respected. It does take a bit of time and effort to get a better understanding of the community, and understanding where we are as human beings. A lot of people are genuine allies and just genuinely don't get why there is discrimination or why there is prejudice against LGBT people. It's an instinctive, natural thing for them, or maybe they were raised differently, and they were raised by absolute perfect parents and absolute perfect religious leaders and so on, where they genuinely do. But for the most part, that's not true. 90, more than 90% of us are raised in a world where we are taught that certain things that are different to our own beliefs and our own systems are not okay. So it's important to understand who you are as a person. And then that then spills down into the values within your organization and your products, and getting good understanding of the LGBT cultural competency within your organization, so that if and when you do start talking about, you offer weddings across the board, it makes perfect sense, because you are seeing it through different eyes, through an educated, allied eye, if that makes sense. So it's not just a case of saying, yeah, we welcome everyone, and not just a case of putting up the flag randomly saying, look, we do gay weddings as well. Because yeah, you can probably get away with it, but is it sustainable? I have my doubts. Yeah. Born female is also not okay, and this is, a lot of people struggle with this conceptually. And I'm not going to lie, I mean, I teach this stuff, but I still struggle to get my head around it often, because it's something that I will personally never ever experience, because I'm not a trans person. So I need to talk to people and learn and understand and get a grasp on it from their experience, and only then will I understand it deeper and deeper and deeper. But we don't say, if a person has transitioned from, for example, female to male, then there's now a transgender male. We don't say they were born a female. We say the correct terminology is they were assigned female at birth, and now they're a trans man, or just a man. So it does get a little complex sometimes. A few other little pointers to take caution of: lifestyle. LGBT people don't live a specific kind of lifestyle. They just live a life like everyone else does. Lifestyle lends to something else, like adventure tourism, for example. That's a lifestyle, because if you're into hiking and you're into kayaking and stuff, that's part of your lifestyle to keep fit and healthy. For example, being LGBTQ, which is regular people just living regular lives. The gay neighborhood. Two things. The two problems with that is, well, the one problem with that is the word gay in there. As I said earlier, if you as an organization are trying to or wanting to become inclusive, you can't be exclusive while you're being inclusive. As soon as we say gay neighborhood, taking the L, the B, the T, the Q, the I, the A, the plus out of that equation completely.
I was just about to say it's very sexist.
It's completely sexist. Of course it is. Yeah. Same thing with gay friendly. Gay friendly, I find so funny, is because if you're in tourism and hospitality and you're not friendly, you're in the wrong industry, I'm afraid. You should be friendly anyway.
True.
And then, of course, overuse of the word gay in materials. Now, a trend that people take is that they think for example, a gay audience wants to see hot men in a Speedo with a six-pack running on the beach with his blow-waved hair in the wind. The problem with that is it appeals to a very small percentage of the LGBT markets. It, number one, doesn't appeal to anybody who isn't gay. And second of all, it doesn't appeal to anybody who is gay and doesn't fit that mold. So then you're automatically not representing the LGBT community. You're only representing a very small part of the gay community. And what LGBT people want to see travelers particularly, they want to see, as I said earlier, 78% of people will switch brands. If you are seen to be showing representation of diversity in your marketing approach, that's what the LGBT market wants to see. They don't want to see a lesbian smoking Peter Stuyvesant with an axe in her hand. And I'm saying for chopping wood, because that stereotype, it's a very real stereotype, and I'm not denying it, but that doesn't represent the LGBT, the lesbian community. That represents a small segment of the lesbian community. So it becomes quite complex. Any questions on this? Nope. Cool. It can't be that good, surely. Pronouns. Knowing when to use pronouns and when not is crucial for creating an inclusive and affirming environment. So let's just run through this very quickly. I'm not a giant fan of the use of pronouns, and people always ask me why. First of all, I think it takes a lot of time. I mean, I'm working with a global organization called Interpride at the moment because we're bidding to bring the World Pride event to Cape Town, and they own the license. And they're all activists. They're all LGBT activists, and their job is to run Pride events around the world and so on. So they're very pro pronouns, which I completely respect and understand why, because there's a lot of trans people in their organizations, a lot of non-binary people who don't identify as the binary male or binary female. They identify somewhere in the middle. So every time you introduce yourself, you have to say your pronouns. So if there's a Zoom call with 20 people and it takes 20 minutes just to say hello to everyone. So that's problem number one for me. But also problem number two is I don't think we should be forcing it down people's throats. I think those who do want their pronouns to be known for their own personal reasons, whether they don't identify as an exclusive male or exclusive female, then we need to respect that. But the only way to respect that is we need to understand them. So let's look here. When to use pronouns. Respecting someone's identity. It's important to use a pronoun that a person has explicitly stated they use, such as she, her, he, him, or they, them. There's also a ze, them as well with a Z, and there's a few others that are coming. This shows respect for the gender identity and expression. Introducing yourself. When meeting someone new, it's a good practice to share your own pronouns first. This normalizes the practice and makes it easier for others to share. Now, this is if you're unsure of a person and you don't want to offend them, this is a great way to actually get a good idea of how they identify without offending them. Referring to a specific person. When talking about a person within the community, use the pronouns that they have shared with you. Avoid making assumptions based on appearance or name. And I actually made this mistake 2 days ago because one of the co-presidents of Interpride, the organization I've just spoken about, is a good friend of mine. Sorry, I've just made that mistake again. They are a good friend of mine. They identify as a they, them. And in conversation about this person, I always refer to Raul as a he. And I have to correct myself every single time because Raul does not identify as a he, Raul identifies as a they. And as an English-speaking person, it becomes challenging because it's grammatically incorrect, as we know. But it's really important that we make that effort because it automatically shows inclusion. And it also, from a hospitality perspective, if you are in the accommodation space, it makes it a lot easier for you through your booking processes. If you're upfront in the booking process, ask people so that by the time they arrive, you already have the information. You already know how they would prefer to be referred to. And this is not a title. This is not a Mr., Miss, Ms., etc. This is an actual pronoun, which is a little more important than the actual title. Titles don't really matter anymore. I'm sure you'll agree. So I hope that makes sense. It's an easy thing to navigate. And also quite a sensitive topic to some people. And then discussing LGBT issues. When talking about LGBT topics, use the appropriate pronouns to refer to the individuals or groups being discussed. This helps maintain accuracy and respect. That's very similar to number 3. It is quite a difficult thing to get used to. I still struggle with it after all these years. But I have to think quite hard. Cool. Then, when not to use or when to avoid using pronouns. If you're unsure of their pronouns, it's best to avoid using pronouns. Instead, use their name or a neutral term like they until you can respectfully ask about their preferences. Now, whenever I greet anyone, if I'm presenting a keynote or if I'm presenting a training or something, I never make an assumption of anyone. So I will never, ever greet a room of people by saying the old traditional, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, because I can't assume that everyone in the room will either identifies as a lady or a gentleman. I need to assume that there may be someone who identifies differently. So I say, good morning, everyone. Generalizing the LGBT community. When discussing the community as a whole, it's often better to use inclusive language like people or individuals rather than making assumptions about their pronouns. That's quite self-explanatory, I think. And then misgendering someone, the example I've just given about Raoul at Interpride, I do it all the time. It's so awkward when I do it. I do it to their face as well. I struggle. There we go. So accidentally using the wrong pronouns for someone can be hurtful, even if unintentional. If you make a mistake, apologize briefly and move on, rather than drawing unnecessary attention to it. Now, often people who are quite fundamentalist about their pronouns, and it's really, really important to them, by misgendering someone and by unintentionally using the wrong pronoun, it can be perceived as a level of homophobia. Now, I'm not saying it is homophobia, because if it's unintentional, it's unintentional. But it can be perceived as a level of homophobia, because homophobia comes with many different masks. It's not necessarily just hate speech or creating anti-LGBT laws or stuff. It's very often just simply the language that we use, because we may or may not know differently or better. But don't be frightened by pronouns. They're a lot easier than...
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
Siri is talking to me. I don't know why. Sorry. And then outing someone. This is a big one. So avoid using pronouns that could reveal someone's gender identity or sexual orientation without their consent, as this can be avoided. It can be a violation of their privacy. That's quite simple. But I think for the most part, if someone tells you what their pronouns are, if it is a they or a them, or they he or a they she, the chance is pretty strong they're out already, and they're proud of it. Cool. So what's important here as well, based on everything I'm saying here, from a gender diversity perspective, there is no singular LGBTQ plus person. So when you are giving some thought to potentially creating an inclusive marketing approach within your organization, you need to understand the diversity within the community. A heterosexual world is a lot easier, because for the most part, the stereotypes people relate to. A man is a man, a woman is a woman. They may be a little bit fluid within that. So in a straight married environment, for example, the gender roles may have shifted, that it's no longer just the man drills the holes and the woman cooks. That they may integrate into a new way of thinking. Well, I hope they have. But from a gender diversity perspective, it's important to understand that within each of those letters of the acronym, it breaks down into even further people as well. So a lesbian person, as I said earlier, is not necessarily the stereotype that we've been raised to believe of a butch, oversized lady with very short hair, wearing a checked shirt and smoking Peter Stuyvesant in the 30s, and brown. It could be a very well groomed corporate executive. So we need to be very careful, and we need to understand the differences between all of them in order to be able to get a gender diversity way of thinking correctly in our marketing. But with that said, it's important also to understand your products and who within that acronym is actually right for your product. Everyone, maybe not, who knows? And then I love this one as well. What was the fourth topic was? Let's go back to this quickly. Sorry, I forgot what the fourth one was. My flu brain again. The barriers and challenges faced. So when you are creating an inclusive space in your working environment, this is such an important slide, and I mean, I could talk for hours and hours and hours on this, but the simple question of which bathroom to use, which bathroom do I use as a trans person or as a non-binary person, the barriers that creates for an LGBT person within a working environment with your colleagues, and as an actual traveler as well, becomes quite challenging and sometimes quite aggressive and problematic for an organization and for a reputation. So it's important to consider these things while you are strategizing how to become inclusive on all levels. It's not just about creating an inclusive marketing campaign. It's going back to that very first comment I made from the European Commission. It's about creating a safe and welcoming environment, and then marketing and welcoming the people. So I had this experience at it's a magnificent hotel in Bangkok. It's the new So Hotel. It used to be a Sofitel. And I chose particularly, I had a choice of a few hotels when I was hosted there. And I picked this one because the research I'd done is that it is a truly inclusive hotel. That's how they sell themselves. And for the most part, they do. But within 5 minutes of me arriving, I walked into my room, and this was in the bathroom. And I went, oh dear, how inclusive are you? I think it's a lovely gesture, and I think it's quite, if you saw the design of the room, it actually makes perfect sense, and it's really lovely. But they automatically have a his and a hers amenity kits in the room. So from an inclusivity perspective, they're marketing themselves as inclusive. And as I said, for the most part, they really are. But this tiny little thing, which is so huge, created such a big impact on me that it's made me believe they're not inclusive because they don't truly understand how to be inclusive. So yeah, it's a challenge. And I did raise it with the general manager, and apparently they are going to fix it, which is lovely. And again, it's not a criticism for them. The fact that they are willing to shift it is amazing. Cool. Let's talk about inclusive language examples here. So I've got 2 blocks there, gendered and gender inclusive. If you want to shout out, please do. What would a gender inclusive version of ladies and gentlemen be? I gave you the answer recently, a few minutes ago.
Everyone.
Everyone. Absolutely. So I love the way Hanali participates and no one else does. Thanks, Hanali.
I'm going to keep quiet now.
No, it's fun.
Uh-huh.
Mother or father? Anyone?
Can it not be parent?
Absolutely. Or caregiver. But parent is probably better. Son or daughter?
Child.
Child.
Children,
Children, absolutely. Man or woman?
persons.
Person, people, absolutely. It's quite easy. It's quite easy to shift it. But we're so conditioned by the way we were raised and taught at school. This is how, to be polite, you refer to someone as a lady or a gentleman, etc. And if someone is your son, they are your son. That's okay. I'm not saying don't use that. I mean, if your son is a boy, then he's your son. That's totally fine. But if you're unsure and you suspect maybe the person is potentially leaning towards a non-binary space, rather be safer and use the word child. I'm not saying use gender inclusive language exclusively. I'm saying be aware of it and know how to shift when it's necessary. I don't have a problem with someone calling me a man because I am a man. If they refer to me as a person, that's okay. I'm also a person. But man for me is better because it's more personal to me. All right, so here's some tips and ideas and thoughts on from a marketing perspective. We'll start with evaluating your company culture. This is really important. And I did mention earlier the concept of LGBTQ plus cultural competency. It's really important to audit that and get a good sense of where you're at. And there are organizations that do provide that service, us being one of them, but there are a few training organizations that do. And it's really important to have a bit of a deep dive into figuring out what's wrong and where are the goals. So some thoughts here is explore what makes your brand LGBT inclusive and what makes it non-inclusive. And versus exclusive. I've mentioned a couple of times today, we can't be exclusive while we're trying to be inclusive. And sometimes those lines are very, very easy to blur. So it's important to take a step back and analyze it really, really clearly and make sure we truly understand the differences. Create an authentic culture of acceptance and equality internally so that it feeds through into the customer experience. I know we all work in the tourism industry and customer is key. I get that because they pay our bills and we need them. Without them, we don't have a business and we don't have an industry. And the work that I do in our training process is we obviously focus on the LGBT traveler and we focus on how you as an organization can help transform your environment to be more inclusive for the traveler. But what we don't forget about is, number one, the LGBT person who works for you. And in my opinion, more importantly, the non-LGBT person who works for you. How do we integrate that thinking to become an inclusive space before the customer has even arrived? Again, going back to the comment, the quote from the European Commission on LGBT tourism, create this safe space internally, and then they will come. Evaluate your employee and customer policies and correct any exclusions. This is where the concept of gender inclusive language comes into play. Are you referring to Mr. and Mrs. only, or Mr., Mrs., Ms., Doc, Professor, etc.? We can include an MX, for example, in there. And we can refer to, for example, when lawyers say in their introductory notes right up front, what's it called, where where the determinations of something with meanings of words, where they say gender refers to both genders, gender refers to all genders. Simple shifts like that. Include LGBTQ plus staff in your planning, as they will have an understanding of the market and be able to share insights. This is really important because that's really true, but also there is a risk of using the token gay. That's not necessarily the right approach. Sometimes they don't care about it and they don't want to, and sometimes they just really don't know. I do like to, so a lot of the organizations that I have worked with and trained, we kind of put a process in place where they have an LGBT champion or more than one. And I encourage that they use a non-LGBT person to do that because it kind of neutralizes the playing field somewhat, and it has a huge effect. Understanding the community. This is important as well when you're putting your strategy in place. Consider the various segments within the community that you're planning and marketing to. As I said earlier, it is the most diverse community in the world. We are literally in every single demographic. If you think about it, when you're walking along the promenade, when you're visiting overseas in any country in the world, any city, any restaurant you go to, you will always see at least one LGBT person every single time. Because we are the most diverse community and we're in every single demographic. So it's about finding the balance between what is your product, what's going to suit, and how to target that particular
Michael?
sector.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. And just, I think it's sort of aligned to what you're saying now is Diana's question about pink travel. Is that still, because if we understand the community, if we're marketing to them, can we still use pink travel?
So I think it depends. It depends entirely on what your product is and what you're hoping to achieve. I think pink travel can be a little exclusive for two reasons. Number one, pink is referred to as, the concept of men don't wear pink, men don't drink pink drinks. So the general perception there is that the word pink refers to a gay, effeminate man, which does exist. It's part of the community, but it doesn't necessarily relate to anyone else in the LGBT community. So when people refer to the terminology of pink travel, pink dollar or pink pound or pink rand, yes, there's value in it, of course there is, but again, it's referring to a very small segment within the community, because behind the pink dollar is an actual person. It's not about the pinkness of their dollar, because their dollars are actually green at the end of the day, like everyone else's dollars. So I wouldn't jump at the opportunity of using pink travel, but if the strategy is right behind it, then yes, go for it. I think there's no harm in it. But again, also, if you're unsure, seek help, seek advice, because there are other ways to do it. There are other ways to position it other than just pink travel. I'm not going to give you the answers now, Diane. I can, but I'm not going to. Consider the various segments. Okay, cool. That's cool. So ensure the photography use is inclusive, and this alludes again to the pink travel thinking. There's very few LGBT free imagery on the internet. There's quite a bit on iStock, but it's going to become exhaustive quite soon because a lot of people are using it. But be very careful of picking the right imagery to suit what you want to do without excluding everyone else. So if you're targeting specifically gay men, that makes it a lot easier because then you can use a variety of gay men in your campaigning. So again, there's many ways around it, and also make sure that whatever it is you're doing, you are doing your best to represent. I know it's really difficult to do that because the community is quite, the acronym is quite big, but there are ways around that if you're finding the right strategy. So decide which LGBT marketing content will go to the LGBT channels and which to mainstream. Now, this is a really important one, and I get asked this question all the time. Do I target specifically the LGBT community, or do I create an integrated, inclusive approach? So I'll show you some examples soon, which will kind of clarify all of this for you. I like both ideas for very different reasons, and there are many ways to skin this cat as well. And I'm not going to go into too much of it now. I'm happy to share with someone if they want to chat afterwards. Ensure you stay informed regarding LGBT trends. It's really important. The community is growing all the time, and it's going to continue to grow. My throat's going dry, sorry. It's the flu. Don't limit your marketing to gay male targeted audiences. I think I've explained that quite a bit. That's really important. You can't be exclusive while you're being inclusive. Stay away from stereotypes. That's a really difficult thing to do as well, because stereotypes are all over the place, and we understand stereotypes. We relate to stereotypes. And I'm not saying stereotypes are a bad thing, as long as it's not the negative stereotype. But again, if you find the right strategy in what the long-term sustainable approach is, there's ways around that. So a few points to consider. Don't take for granted that all of your employees will deliver high quality service to your LGBT customers. Train your staff and avoid misunderstandings or situations that can be perceived as discriminatory. It happens all the time, regularly. I hear stories weekly about staff members who got it completely wrong because they didn't know better. And coming from organizations who are putting a flag outside. It's important to make sure everyone truly understands their own perception of the community and the actual community itself, and how to integrate the two. Become a member of the IGLTA. I'm a huge fan, and I mentioned accredited earlier. It's a great way to position yourselves globally as an accredited and as an inclusive product or destination or organization or whatever it is that you do. Include regular blog articles in your digital marketing strategy on content that could interest an LGBT customer. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean talking about pride events or talking about gay weddings or talking about overtly specific LGBT things. It could be using an LGBT singer as a reference point. There's many ways to skin the cat. I'm not going to give you all the answers now, but it's not just about doing something that is specifically LGBT. And you'll see on the side of my screen, I've got the LGBT colors on purpose, because that's what I'm talking about. But if I was talking about general things, I would not use those colors. I would use a generic picture. Consider hosting an LGBT section on your websites. I know this came out quite strongly in the statistics earlier. This is really, really important. I personally would love to get to the point where this is not necessary, where it becomes integrated into your mainstream website, but perhaps it is a great solution for now. And again, the ways to do that requires a strategy. Do you want to pinkwash it? And if so, why? What's the strategy? Is it going to work for you? Or do you want to create a more inclusive environment? Maintain a high quality concierge service, which is up to date on the LGBT scene in your area, and provide helpful information. I'm sure most of you who are in that space are doing that already anyway. Be sure to include equal services to all of your guests. So think back to the So Hotel example that I showed you in Bangkok. Simple things like that. I know most people are not doing this anymore, but one big slipper, one small slipper. How about a slipper that fits? Show support for the LGBT community from a social responsibility point of view. This is such a valid point, especially now that we've just come out of Pride Month, which, by the way, I'm not sure if any of you are aware of this, but June is not South Africa's Pride Month. June is the Northern Hemisphere's Pride Month, and it has by default become a global Pride Month. October is actually South Africa's Pride Month, because on the 13th of October 1990 is when Simon and Corley started the very first Pride March in Johannesburg. So it's actually October. But anyway, so show support from a social to the community from a social responsibility point of view. Again, many ways to skin this cat. It's not just about sponsoring 20 t-shirts at the Pride event. There's many ways to do it. And again, I'm not going to give you all the answers now. So a few more points to consider. Normalize inclusivity. That's the end goal. That's what we want to achieve. Eventually want to be out of a job because we've normalized inclusivity. And avoid focusing solely on ad hoc Pride events, as I've said. Pride, this is an important line. Pride is a tactic. It's not a strategy. So if you target everyone, you're not resonating with anyone. Any questions on this so far? It's a lot of information, I know. Okay, cool. Let's move on. So I've just got a whole bunch of samples here, which I'm going to talk through very briefly. Now, I don't have information on all of them. I do have information on some of them, and I have a lot of opinions on a lot of them as well. So if you look at the top left corner, Bud Light. Bud Light has earned an incredible reputation in America for being an inclusive brand. They strategically decided to target the LGBT community, and it worked. It's backfired a tiny bit with them because a lot of the kind of middle America, I can't say the word, thinking, who are very anti-LGBTQ, they've lost as customers, But their attitude was, well, we'll gain new customers if you go. You're obviously not our customer. They've done a beautiful, beautiful project there. So they did this this together in Pride. It was a Pride specific campaign because they've earned the badge. They've done amazing work within their organization and with their marketing and communication process. M&S, we all know, is Marks and Spencer's in the USA. I mean, in the UK. Ew, I think that's just hideously over rainbow washed. Take Pride, this was Target in the US. They got nailed for this because they have zero LGBT policy in place. They do nothing for the community whatsoever. And they did this, and it was right at the back of the store so no one could see it. So again, they were using it as a tactic, not as a strategy. And unfortunately, the LGBT community are not stupid enough to fall for it. Absolute Vodka, similar to Bud Light, they've been actively involved in the community for a very long time, and they release this this rainbow bottle. I think it's once a year, and it's always a hit, and people love it because they do good work. Similarly with Converse, their Pride range is always amazing, and it's year-round as well. They don't do it specifically for Pride months. Doritos, I love this campaign so much. I think it's so clever and so lovely. That's my opinion. I have no idea what other work they do, and I can't find any information, but I do like it, and it apparently had a good response. Or this was 2023 Edgar's. I nearly vomited on the floor when I walked past it because Edgar's does literally nothing on the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side, you will remember this one as well, Be an Ally. That was Woolworths' campaign that took so much flack. And it was a difficult one for me to get my head around because on the one side, they do a bit of work. On the other side, they don't. But their approach was quite rainbow washing over Pride Month in June, and they went under a lot of attack, and they kind of put quite a few media style, like a press release style responses out that kind of mitigated the criticism. But I'm not sure that they've actually fixed it because same thing this year, they just suddenly put the stuff up again and then nothing else, nothing throughout the year. So it's a bit odd for me. This is my favorite one. We all recognize that, right? That's
We have a
Vodacom.
question. So,
Yeah.
oh, Vodacom.
Let's come back to that. There's a question?
Yes. Sorry. Can I pose a question quickly?
Sure.
So, I'm also an event hoster, and I'm wondering if I to do maybe decoration of rainbow, do I also need to, I mean, does it include everyone besides the LGBT plus community? Or maybe for an example, if I to brand glasses or anything, do I have other glasses unbranded to include the other part
No.
of the community?
No, I think it's dependent on what the purpose of your event is. If it is an LGBT specific event, then by all means you must do that. If the event has got nothing to do with LGBT people at all, then I would question, why are you doing that? Are you trying to prove a point? Are you trying to create a statement? And if so, perhaps the person who owns the event, I'm assuming you would do the event for a customer. What is their strategy behind it, and why do you want to incorporate the rainbow flag? If it's for the right reasons, go for it. But I think you need to ask that question. If it's for the purposes of doing it because you want them to be seen to be inclusive, that might not be the right strategy behind it. But I can't really give you a solid answer because I don't know the context of your events. Happy to chat about it if you want, and guide wherever I can. Vodacom, this is my favorite. I noticed they didn't do it this year, probably because I caused such a fuss last year with them. I think it's dreadful because it means nothing and they don't do anything. That's my opinion. British Airways, they do a little bit of work. I don't think enough, particularly, especially for an airline. I think airlines need to be a little more progressive these days. There are a few that are very progressive. British Airways, again, this feels a lot like a rainbow washing campaign to me. And also, they could have at least paid a designer to do it differently. I mean, do a better job. It's to my opinion. I'm a bit ruthless with my opinion, yeah. This one I absolutely love. So Virgin and Qantas, believe it or not, Qantas Australia, have led the way in terms of, especially in the gender space. They introduced gender neutral uniforms. Their company policies are next level with their employees. It is the most beautiful experience to witness them. They're doing such a beautiful job. So when they do in the bottom left corner, you'll all recognize that image. It's usually a lady who's flying. They put a gay man there over Pride Month, which is absolute rainbow washing of the highest degree. But they've earned the right to do that because of the work that they're doing, and I think it's very beautiful. If anyone disagrees with me, please shout. Lego, children's brand. Wonderful work. They are also leading the way in corporate America, on LGBT issues and human rights processes within their organization. Brilliant stuff, in my opinion. I love this as well. This was Subaru, which is known as a lesbian's car, the stereotype. And Subaru, or Subaru, however we say it, identified this many years ago, and they actually created a very specifically targeted campaign for lesbians, because they realized that the lesbians were attracted to their vehicles. And they sold gajillions of cars to lesbians because of it. And since then, they've always been, we're very well known as being a lesbian brand. And it works beautifully well because it's completely subtle. I mean, if you see Camp Out and Xena Lover, I mean, it's very clever. Different drivers, different roads, one car. And where's the rainbow flag in there? Tiny flag under the red vehicle. And if it wasn't there, it still would have been a brilliant advert. It still would have made perfect sense. So back to the tourism space, both of these are real examples. Marriott and Hilton a number of years ago created these campaigns. The Marriott campaign, I believe it's still actually running, but very subtly. It was called Love Travels, where they picked real people who are in the LGBT community, and they told their story through their campaigns. So it wasn't just two men and with kids. There was that campaign with a lesbian lady, with a black lesbian lady, a white lady, with a lesbian couple, with a non-binary person, and one with a trans person as well. And it was a huge success, and it didn't have any negative impact at all on their campaigns. Similarly to Hilton, personally, I do think the image that they used might be a little overt. I don't think it's always necessary to have people kissing, straight or gay, on any kind of marketing, unless your product is specific to that. But nonetheless, there's a strategy behind this. Stay Hilton, go out. I mean, it's really simple, but it's clever and it's effective. And it's not exclusive in any way. Even though it's just two men, the fact that they've used go out, and again, they also use different images as well. This is not the only campaign. I love the Southwest advert. It's a little bit dated at the moment. It is quite old, so I wish they would create a new one now so we can see how clever they are. Where and you see this is southwest.com/gay travel. They had a specific LGBT page on their website about gay travel. I think it's a very clever advert. It's quite overt, but I think it's lovely. The Chevy, I totally love this. Mom, Dad, I'm electric. And all they're doing here is saying that Chevy supports the concept of people who are different to me. So they're supporting trans people. They're supporting people who don't identify as absolute male or absolute female, so gender conforming, non-binary people. And they're doing it through a very beautifully targeted campaign, and I think it works quite well. And it's subtle and it's fun as well. To jewelers, now obviously same-sex weddings are really important, and I know I said they're just weddings, but for the purposes of this, same-sex weddings are really important, especially from a tourism perspective. As from a destination wedding point of view, it's huge. That's huge money actually. They spend huge dollars, green dollars. So I think it's just very beautiful. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but they speak beautifully, and I think it appeals to most people who are not extreme homophobes. I think people get it. People get that it's okay to incorporate LGBT thinking within a product's range. So this story, you don't have to read it. I'll tell you very quickly. This is a real actual story that happened at a lodge in South Africa. An older gay couple brought a straight nephew to South Africa on a safari. They were on the safari trip. And the game ranger, who was probably not homophobic, he just probably didn't realize that what he was doing was homophobic, had a couple of homophobic slurs. The old gay men didn't bother them because they were used to it. They grew up like that, and their world has, although it's changed somewhat, their expectation was kind of met in a way. It offended the 30-something-year-old nephew who was straight, and he complained, and he wrote a TripAdvisor report. These are all the stats, the actual facts of what happened. And I've been led to believe that there was a UK-based tour operator that had a year-long series booked, straight-owned UK operator, no interest in the LGBT community whatsoever, but pulled the entire series of bookings because of that one experience. So we've got to be very careful from a strategy point of view to not do things for the wrong reasons. We need to understand why we're doing it, understand the audience, and make sure we do our best to get it right. We won't always get it right, and that's okay as long as we're striving to do our best. Now, this one is an actual real story. I designed this myself. Obviously, you can see I'm not a graphic designer, and I never will become one because I'm terrible at it. But I did it badly on purpose. The Blue Lagoon Island Beach Resort. I don't know if it exists. I just made that up. I had an experience pre-COVID where a lesbian couple in Cape Town asked me to assist with their destination wedding. We went through a number of different country options. They settled on Mauritius, which at the time, the laws were still quite bad. They shifted a little bit, but the laws were still quite bad then. So I reached out to a number of tour operators to see who would help. And this particular hotel was the hotel was very, very keen. And they were very happy to spend a bit of time with me on some high-level training and so on. But the operator that I worked through didn't want to. When I asked for the marketing collateral, they gave me the stereotypical man-woman brochures, and I said to them, "I can't send this to my client because it's two ladies. Or would you be prepared to shift it?" And they said no. And I kind of fought it a little bit, saying, "But I need you to, because this is not cool." Anyway, they refused. So I probably badly took the liberty of getting my designer to take their structure and just replace the images, which I did. And I sent it to them and I said, "This is what I've done. Please don't be mad at me. I'm going to send this to them unless you object vehemently." They said, "No, cool, that's fine. You can send it." So I did. We got the gig. We did the events. And to this day, they're still not prepared to do that, which is quite strange. So the lack of representation here makes it completely difficult. It doesn't appeal to any LGBT person whatsoever. Putting a little rainbow flag in the corner means nothing. I'm sure you'll agree. So here's a lovely, lovely video. Well, I think it's lovely. Let's see.
You don't own me. I'm not just one of your many toys. You don't own me. Don't say I can't go with other boys. And don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to say. And please, when I go out with you, don't put me in display, 'cause you don't own me. Don't try to change me in any way. You don't own me. Don't tie me down, 'cause I never stay. I don't tell you what to say. I don't tell you what to do. So just let me be myself. That's all I ask of you. I'm young and I love to be young. I'm free and I love to be free. To live my life the way that I want. To say and do whatever I please.
Does anybody have any comments on that?
Yes, I do. It is stunning. I love it. Love the song in any case. And with the work that you're doing, and as you said, you're hoping to be out of a job soon, we will get to the point where this is a mixture of straight and LGBT community. As they're dancing in the street, there's straight people dancing as well. And, that's where we're aiming to get to. But I love it.
Yes, absolutely. That is where we need to get to. What I like about this, their strategy was to be 100% LGBT. Diana, do you want to say something?
I also just want to say, yes, if it was totally marketed to the community, it is absolutely beautiful. And yes, I also agree with Hanneli. Hopefully, somewhere along the line, we can market it. But again, what was the purpose? It was to market to this. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's even more beautiful about it is every single person involved in this project, from every cameraman, every editor, every singer, every performer, every single one of them was in the LGBT community. They did not use a single non-LGBT person at all. So it was all about their strategy. They just completely targeted exactly what they wanted. I do have it. I have heard though from the vice president of IGLTA that they actually never really did anything with the campaign, which is a real pity. I wish they had.
Oh,
Yeah,
so maybe we can steal it.
look, I mean, anyone can steal a concept. I mean, because you can't really we all have similar ideas. No, I think it's beautiful, but I do agree with you, Hanley. I think it's not for everyone, and I don't think it's necessary for everyone to do something like this. I think what's more important is to find the balance between what we know to be the normal and incorporating this into it so that it positions itself as inclusive. I think that's more important. But I also think it's absolutely beautiful. I love it. I can watch it a million times. I did actually cry the first time, but I'm not going to lie. This is a great example as well. The Axel Hotel Group started in Barcelona. It was the guy who opened the group. His name is Juan Julia. He's a very nice guy. He opened the first Axel Hotel in Barcelona as an exclusively gay hotel, and he had loads of fun with it. Things like, instead of having do not disturb signs on the doors, he had please disturb signs and things like that. And then as they've grown as a brand and they've built new hotels around the world and everything, they've opened up their doors to everyone. So they've taken the reverse approach here, where they position themselves now as hetero-friendly, which I think is quite fun. Any
If I can
questions?
just mention something, please, Michael.
Yes, of course, Diana.
I stayed actually in an Axel hotel when I was staying in Buenos Aires, and I was traveling for business, and then stayed a little bit on further. But it was a total inclusive property, and it was wonderful because it was just so inclusive. And as people were noticing, I'm by myself. I had loads of fun with everybody that was coming and going, and also the management. That make sure that everybody is really equally welcome.
Absolutely. They have totally got it right. They really have. So let me tell you a quick story quickly because I'm actually nearing the end here. Let me tell you, and we've got a bit of time. So for those of you who don't know, I do Allstate offers a sensitivity and awareness training program. And we've trained a number of properties in the country and up in Europe and so on. And in Cape Town specifically, there is one particular property. It was actually the first property in Africa that was trained, that had their full staff trained on LGBT context. And this particular hotel brings in, I think it's 5 or 6 gay groups a year from North America. And I know who they are, and I know the companies who own the operators in the States, and I know when they're coming and so on. And I happened to bump into the group when they were here a few months ago, and I knew who they were because I was fishing for information, and I didn't tell them who I was, and I was asking a number of questions, and the feedback I got from literally every single one of them, there were 12 of them plus their tour leaders, so 13. Every single one of them was like, this hotel is incredible. Like they just completely understand the whole gay thinking. And then the one guy very specifically said to me, it's as if they're all gay. So I said to him, what do you mean by that? Of course I knew the answer. I said, but what do you mean by that? He said, no, it's as if they just get us. And at that point, I then revealed why I know. And I said, well, it's because they do get you, because they have, number one, put their staff through the right training to tap into their own personal understanding and perception of the market and shift whatever they need to. They and they've learned about the community. They know a lot more than they did before, and they've continued to do the work on bettering themselves as human beings to become more inclusive as a person, and as a result, as an organization. And they've had to do no marketing whatsoever, because just their approach has shifted them into that space. So there's huge value in taking the right steps to becoming an inclusive environment, the right way, not necessarily overtly. Before we close, does anybody have any last question? We're a bit early. I hope you learned something. I don't want to give you too much away because I don't want you to think now you got it right. It takes a bit of work. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Whilst we're waiting for questions, Michael, I have loved it. I have absolutely loved it. I wish we can do more of this. I'm so keen to do like the full training, and we do need to look at that for SATSA as well. So that we know, because if we are going to be guiding and giving advice to the industry, this would be so critical. But yeah, it was just absolutely amazing. I'm hoping that maybe we can do something in the future together again. And thank you so much for everybody that attended. It has been a very insightful, very exciting, very colorful and happy space that we've been in, even with Michael struggling, and I could hear your voice was giving out there. So thank you for pushing through for us today. You are a committed person.
I am indeed. Thank you. Okay, well,
Yeah.
okay, cool. So are there any questions before we close? I don't think so.
Maneshe? I hope I'm saying that right.
Yes, I was asking that when is the next one and where to from here?
Okay, so we've done the first two. I'm going to send you an email afterwards, as you asked now. So you can go and have a look at the recordings, and then I think maybe reaching out to Michael, thinking about your business or other people's businesses and how you want to take it forward. But that's probably direct conversations with me and Michael. And that's the same, that's the invitation.
Your emails will be there. So.
Yes, I'm going to send you the email.
Oh, okay.
But the same invitation goes to everybody else. If you have found this interesting, if you are thinking about incorporating some of this into your organization or into your campaigns, Michael is available. If you don't have his contact details, I will make sure that it is in the newsletter that we send tomorrow. But please reach out to him. And if you have already gone through some kind of verification, please let me know, because then we can do that route, the LGBTQ route on our map, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you, everyone. And just one last video just to close. If those of you who were here last time, you saw this as well, but I always close with this.
Labels aren't a thing for me, and I think that society is just too small to be fit into boxes. I like girls, and I think that they're cute. And I've been dating my girlfriend for almost 7.5 years, so honey, if you're watching this, hello.
I've had one boyfriend, currently single. But yeah, I like men.
So by asexual, it means that I do not experience any sexual attraction. It is not the same as celibacy or the choice to abstain from sex. Pansexual means that I'm not restricted to the gender, whether you are male, female, non-binary, trans. For me, it's not relevant.
For me, I was assigned female at birth, but decided to transition roughly 4 years ago now.
Say it one more time. Non-binary.
I'm on testosterone and plan to have surgery in the future.
Because some of the things that society has taught you are for men are actually for anybody, like short hair or flannel shirts. I am a beautiful woman. She is.
And that's me.